Welcome back to the Blockville podcast. We are here with Josh Jones from Cornucopias. So you are a co-founder and I believe the co-CEO of
Yeah, that's
Cornucopias.
correct.
What does that mean to be the co-CEO? How do you guys decide the final decisions here?
Yeah, it's a good question. So in this case, there is a ton to do on the token and the business side that's separate from a lot of the game management side and building the game. So Rob and I kind of split those two tasks up a little bit, but we're both very involved in each. It's just one has ownership, more ownership than the other. So I tend to own more of the business management overall perspective a little bit more than he does, with a hand in marketing as well and finance. So I'm overseeing two of our directors in that regard. And then Rob is more on the game planning side with everything. It's a good split really. Cause there's just
Uh,
as soon as you bring the crypto element in, there's so much more that needs to be managed. For example, right now we've been adding on some centralized exchanges. I mean, that's a big task and a lot of work goes into it. Yeah. You just add the crypto element and so much more is involved. It creates a lot of complexity.
so just for those who are unfamiliar with the game, I know you guys haven't done a massive launch quite yet. So I always want to start things off with just what is Cornucopias? If you could just give a high level overview and then we'll dive in some more.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So Cornucopias is an open world multiplayer adventure where it's a Web3 game where humanity has ascended. The lore is where humanity has ascended the earth because of a great calamity. And they're creating these dome structures in the sky. Each one is a different gaming experience. And that's all tied in with our lore. But for example, right now we're in pre-alpha and we have the racing dome, Toledo Valley Raceway is live. And so you can go explore, you can do puzzle rooms, things like that. Look for holo caches, which are these little treasures you can collect all around the map and get XP points. But then you can also go racing. So that's the first dome that is live. There's going to be so much more that we open up this year. For example, a lot of our theme zone uh, are going to open. So we have Solace, which looks a lot like Colorado with rivers and streams and mountains, and that's going to open up. We've had a land NFT sale about a year and a half, 2 years ago, where we sold all our land NFTs. And so this year is when people get to claim and select where their plots are on these giant domes that we launch. For example, there's going to be Solace 1, 2, and 3. Each one of those is 8 kilometers in diameter. So that's an enormous amount of space for people to explore and do all sorts of things, crafting, mining, fishing, farming, all sorts of in-game, participating in the in-game economy. All of that is going to be coming gradually over this year. But yeah, a lot of land plot selections will occur as well.
Yeah, I guess over this development cycle, what has been, I think, one of the hardest things for you to grapple with of just managing that direction. We've seen a lot of we had a conversation this morning with Steve Wade over at midnight, and there's a lot of traps you can fall into with buzz and getting too hyped up in these different directions. What keeps you centered?
The vision, that's a great question. So I'm hearing two elements to that question. That what are some of the challenges we faced
Yeah.
in the startup process, and then what keeps you centered? So I would say that the overall vision for what we want to accomplish is what we have had to almost constantly, and this has been one of the challenges as well, is that you have to fight to protect that vision, because a lot of you get, especially when our community kind of took off pretty quickly. And so we've had a ton of projects approach us with all sorts of stuff they want to do. And in the beginning, that's incredibly exciting. And it's part of the ethos of crypto that the way you launch a project is to announce a bunch of awesome partnerships. The reality is what you can actually execute on while also building your game or your project and your vision is really hard. And so that's probably been one of the main challenges. Is there's so much that we all want to do. Our vision is already enormous. So as soon as you try to add anything new on, I mean, come on, it's just, so we
Yeah.
have to fight to protect that vision, to keep the team aligned around our main goals, our main priorities, which is delivering an incredibly entertaining game with progression, skill sets, and a token economy, and all of that inside of it. So there's a lot there. There's so much complexity. It's, and a second part to that challenge is how hard it's been to execute on a lot of these areas. You think you can do X, Y, and Z in this amount of time. Well, the reality is you could probably do X and Y. And so we have to figure out, how do we try to compress time and get more done in a short amount of time? And part of that is, hey, this sounds exciting to do, but we're going to have to wait.
What is Web3 gaming? Like, why did you guys decide to do Web3 gaming? And community being such a huge part of Web3, like, do they play a role essentially like a DAO and like, hey, let's build this together, and they all kind of vote on,
We're
part of the
moving in
game?
that direction, yes. And that is a big part of it. So why Web3? Number one, it's such a sweet paradigm shift, paradigm in the sense of the way that Web 2 looks at gaming versus the way that Web 3 looks at gaming. Web 3 looks at gaming where the players should take ownership in their assets and be able to sell them when they're done with them. So you get to participate with these in-game assets and play the game and have more fun. But when you're done, you don't walk away with nothing. You actually have a liquid, decentralized market where you can sell those assets, or you could trade them all along the way and work your way up to various different assets. And that's a whole gamified experience in itself, is just trying to kind of climb the ladder up with different in-game assets based upon what you think is going to be worth more as the economy takes off. So that's one reason, because that adds a whole new layer of fun and ownership and participation from your community. The second element of why Web3 is there's a powerful, and I guess there's two more elements really. There's a powerful community element to Web3. That's one of the things that I love about it. It's like, it's a we kind of thing. It's, we're in this together.
Yeah.
And yes, eventually we have a DAO, but we haven't set up the framework that's in process this year, where we're going to be adding more and more decisions and governance to the token, where the community can really participate more and more over time. So that's a big part of our vision as well, is that gradually we will empower the community more and more to have a voice in this. And then the third element, with crypto, it's the funding process is easier. So in mainstream investing, you raise money and you fight to talk to, all of these VC companies, private equity companies, whatever. And that could be a 1.5 year long process.
Yeah.
It could be quite a bit faster in crypto because people are ready and looking for stuff. And it's more about a large group of people than one single entity that's raising the funds. So it's an easier process. And so I think that changes the way that Web3 companies can build and participate with their community. It's such a powerful thing. Because Web 2, the paradigm there is raise funds with traditional VC or private equity, then build in the dark for the most part for 5 years, and then release something and then get your community feedback. That doesn't make any sense. It does in some regards, but what we get to do is we get to build all along the way and gradually release more and more to our community, get them excited. Everybody has fun doing it. You're anticipating what's coming next. And we have a forever game. We call this a forever game. We're going to be building for a long time, which is a lot of fun.
No, I love it. And we were just talking about with Steve on that front. It's just like, it's massive. You see these meme coins even like that have nothing behind it go out and raise $2.5 billion, I think, in 2 days or something. Insane. I'll have to fact check myself on those exact numbers, but it was just remarkable to see some of the movement in this space. And now if you put an actual business behind it, that is something that I think is that next evolution. And you're talking about raising funds, like you can raise $2 billion in a day or two. That changes the whole paradigm of investing.
Yeah, those meme coins, that can be quite interesting what happens with those. You can end up positioning yourself quite well depending upon when you enter and when you start raising funds. But yeah, luckily we ran some NFT sales near the end of the last bull cycle that positioned us with selling our land and different various assets. It positioned us to endure a long bear cycle and keep building. And so it's pretty cool because the community that is so important and they're like family, like
Yeah.
we've cultivated, that's one of our strongest assets or one of the strongest parts of the Cornucopias project and game is that we have this community that's just so passionate about what we're doing. And we've built relationships with them by communicating regularly over time. For example, Rob and I have a show. We have a show called Kopi Cafe where we just do a weekly update in the name of
Love that.
transparency and just telling our community where we're at. That's very important to us. And it's paid off really well because they look forward to it. They have memes and they share memes about like eating popcorn and watching Kopi Cafe on Fridays. You know, it's like people are excited to see what's getting released. It's a lot of fun.
Love that.
You mentioned it on like building in public, and like you guys are doing a weekly feedback, which is awesome. What is maybe some of the feedback that was like tough to swallow or like caused you guys to like really make a change?
Uh, okay. That's a good question. I think the hardest feedback to swallow is every time you have an NFT sale of some kind, it's like you get there was a strong, and I don't know if it'll be like this cycle, but there was a strong NFT flipping community. And you get a lot of these like short-term mindset, flipper kind that bring a lot of negativity sometimes into the community, that has been somewhat challenging at times to deal with because it's like, one of the things that we're proud of is, hey, we have a vision, we're sticking to it, and we're in it, building, communicating with you all along the way that like, let's stay in this all together for a while kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, some of the shorter term mindsets throw things out that are pretty antagonistic at times. But hey, look, we understand that that's just another element of the crypto space. And so it's nothing against those guys. It's just something you have to kind of brush it off, and know that they're here for a different purpose than what we want everybody, and that's okay. Cause that's playing a part of what we're building as well. And we're okay with that, but that's been somewhat challenging. Hopefully I answered that question well.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit more about the economy of the games? And like you mentioned that people are buying land. So could I go buy, I think we mentioned this on the last conversation we had, but like, could I create like a casino or a gas station? And when people need to go fill up their gas, for example, do I get a piece of that action? Or you just talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. So, initially it's going to be different types of industries. I don't know the exact answer with the gas station example, but I will say that is the essence of it. So the idea is that you would be able to farm your land and potentially trade those resources for other resources. Another example would be that you gradually work your way up the progression cycle and you have a metal shop, a metalsmith, a blacksmith, and you're building up that industry to be more and more productive and efficient as a manufacturing plant for metal. So it starts as a small craft operation and it works its way up several levels. And then eventually it might be something that involves several other people as well in a collab for this larger manufacturing plant that then sells those items to the community for other resources and goods. So those are a couple examples. You might also, there's players' needs, right? Survival needs. So you need food for energy. You got to go gather some fish. So one thing might be that you work your way up the fishing progression ladder and you get more productive at gathering food that you can then trade to others for other things you may need or whatever it may be. And then there's, farming your land. So that's another example where you produce foods and goods that you could trade in the local market. As well, mining, I would say there's going to be like 5 different types of resources that you can go under the ground and mine. And we've already built that out. And there's been a couple examples. You can find them in some of our videos of the mining element, and that'll be released this year as well. We can go down and you're literally taking a pickaxe, and there's progression to that as well. You might get a better axe and you get a little better at it, whatever it may be.
Yeah, it reminds me of World of Warcraft back in the day. I was a big nerd.
It's got
It's nice
similar
fun.
elements to that. Yeah. We've been compared to that a little bit, but there's quite a bit more as well. So, I don't want to put us in a box, but we've definitely got a lot of that element for sure.
On the side of like, especially like in your role, when you're looking at these little economies, these little micro economies, how hard is it to like, build, say, the economics or fill out, the economics of it in like understanding, you have tokenomic side, which is like you kind of learned in the NFT sale of like, hey, it's an open market. People come in early, buy a ton, and then, that's great for volume, brings in new buyers. People see that on the charts, and then they can also sell really quickly. So that can like totally kill any momentum. And then suddenly there's not enough liquidity for like normal buyers. What, not just on the tokenomic side, but like, how do you kind of like, I don't know if you've your economics background, but how do you manage these different little economies and how you can like
Oh no,
expect supply and demand to play out?
yeah, that's a great question. So we literally had a meeting with a economist that we've brought on as a consultant today. And we've had a mathematician that is a statistics guy and a data analytics and more on the tokenomics side. There are so many elements to this. It's baffling how much work it's taken us to get to the point where we're ready to publish more around what our intentions are with this. But it's incredibly challenging because number one, you add the token element with Web3. It's hard enough with an economy like World of Warcraft or, whatever the game, the other MMORPG type game may be. That in-game economy is hard to have balance. Like, there's a game called New World, for example, and I think some of their in-game items got well out of balance because that was not managed necessarily in a way that kept the game balanced, which means some things get way out of whack and it really changes the gameplay for the players. And that's not to speak bad about them. They got an awesome game, but it's a very challenging thing to pull off. And so knowing that, and then adding the token complexity on top of that, we have 3 layers so far where we're seeking advice and wisdom. That's one was the first guy that I told you about, the mathematician, statistics and data guy that helped us with the overall macro view of all of this. We're doing final tweaks to that, and that's going to be released possibly the end of this week, if not early next week, but I'm not sure when this video gets published. Then we've got the other economist that I told you about we spoke with today, and that is a professional economist. This is his career. He's in Web 2 and Web 3 gaming. And just so you know, there might be 40 of these guys in Web 2 gaming in the entire world. That's what he's aware of in his space. He said that was one of the most challenging things of his career is finding other people that are doing this. So it's a small number of people, and we had to kind of hunt that guy down. But then when you add the Web 3 element, so do you have experience as a Web 2 and a Web 3 economist? That gets an even smaller pool. There might be like 10 that have experience with both of those as in the game space. So it's a very narrow circle of people. And I believe it's going to become high demand after a while for that skill set. Thankfully, we landed a relationship with one. We feel like it's going to work pretty well, which is great. And then the final answer to your question is we have a partnership with a service provider called Machinations, and they're going to do Monte Carlo simulations of all the variables, of all the resources inside the game. This is more at a micro level, and they'll do Monte Carlo simulations. And hopefully with those Monte Carlo simulations, we'll be able to figure out some level of balance and what are the levers that helps this to be an incredibly fun game still. But it's hard. And we know we're going to mess up and there's a lot of complexity, but knowing that we're going to mess up means, all right, look, let's lean on the wisdom of professionals and not think that we're so smart that we can figure everything out and hopefully take the right path, or at least the best path that we can.
Now, in terms of like the size of the actual land, like you mentioned, it's massive in comparison to like Call of Duty, right? We were just playing. I played that quite a bit during COVID.
I'm honestly not sure, and I've played a good amount of Call of Duty. I love that
Yeah.
game. Some of the maps are quite a bit, I'm imagining some recent maps, but I think I haven't played the most recent version of Call of Duty, but about a year ago, some of the maps had these giant like freight containers,
Yeah.
and that map was really small. So it's just
Mm.
a quick, and it was incredibly fast paced. You go in there and it's just PvP and you're just shooting people constantly, right? And you got people on your team, their team, whatever. That one like is really small, but I think there were other maps where it seemed like there was a good amount of space to explore. I don't know the total, but I will tell you this: when we have all 12 zones out and everything that we have intended to launch, I'm pretty certain it will be one of the largest, if not the largest, in terms of square footage to explore games in the world. I'm not sure of that stat, but like it's big. It
Yeah.
will be big.
Now, is that insanely expensive to then have the GPU power? If someone's on one side of the map, someone's on the other, everything has to stay constant. Like,
Yeah, that's a
how
great
do you guys
question.
build
So
that up?
performance wise, the way that that has to work, and this is one of the treasures of the way that we've decided to do this with these domes in the sky. And it's amazing how the lore ties into all of this, but these domes in the sky are when you fly your vehicle from dome to dome to do different curated gaming experiences and to participate in all of these economies that I mentioned. When you fly to a new dome, that's going to open up, like there's going to be a waiting screen. You're going to have to wait until that server loads up and then it loads you up. So we're not serving the entire realm of cornucopias all at once. And that enables us to make a performant game without a doubt. There's no way we could serve it all up at once. It's not possible with tech limitations. So what we have to do is get creative, and you have areas where it will load up this particular space when you fly to this dome. And then you'll have maybe 100 players in there running around and some NPCs. And yeah, even the NPCs cost performance, even the assets and the polygons, the number of polygons in each asset, the mountain, the lake, water that's moving and reflective. That takes performance and pulls down your performance. And one thing we've been highly conscious of the entire time, because this data has to replicate from me to you. You might be in Colorado right now, hundreds of miles apart. That data has to replicate almost instantaneously. And to have a good frames per second, we have to be very conscious of the performance all along. And thankfully, we have been. Our game director's done a phenomenal job of keeping that optimized, keeping the number of polygons in each asset to the absolute minimum while still looking incredible. And I think we've come up with a pretty insanely good balance.
Yeah, you mentioned, I think in the last conversation around just like your experience with Unreal Engine 4 and then how Unreal Engine 5 is, at the level that it's at. And it wouldn't be possible what you're doing now with, previous iterations of it. What are some of the other like tech learnings or, current like up-to-date tech like stack that you're looking at that wouldn't be possible if you tried to build this game 4 years ago, 5 years ago?
Oh, I don't think we would have the possibility to even test virtual reality type experience. So that's coming along. And the cool thing about what we have with these domes is that we can spin up a dome that's all about testing VR. And we can make that available to a small group of people, see how the experience is, and see if the market is really going somewhere. With Apple coming out with their new VR headset, we are seeing enough traction starting to happen in terms of the ecosystem of VR to experiment with that eventually. But we have a lot to currently deliver on, so we're not going to do that just yet. But I would say the biggest one in answer to your question, and that will be big. I
Yeah.
do think that VR will be very big. And the cool thing is, I think we're going to be able to capitalize on it incredibly well. But right now, that's not a big part of what we're doing. I will say that switch to Unreal Engine 5, that was a game changer for us. I mean, had we stayed on 4, we'd be stuck there right now. We would have to pause for probably 6 months or more, maybe 6 months or a year to redo everything. Had we kept building and then we decided to wait until later to switch to 5, that would be an enormous amount of things that we had to redo the workflows entirely on. and systems and art and assets, all of that would have to be redone. So incredibly fortuitous that we were able to, and I'm so thankful for this, that we made the decision to move with Unreal Engine 5 at the time. So that was a big one. We talked about it for 2 weeks. We went back and forth on it. There was a major risk to it because it's a huge new gaming engine release and could be filled with bugs. I mean, that's like, could be all sorts of issues that you have to do workarounds on. And thankfully there weren't too many, but we definitely had to have quite a few workarounds as we were shifting, but that they've since resolved in Unreal Engine 5.2, 5.3 as well. So thankfully we're in great shape with Unreal Engine 5. I mean, it's incredibly powerful. So that was a huge move. And yeah, it's the most powerful gaming engine in the world right now. There's nothing that even compares.
On the last conversation, we were talking about bringing some like advertisers within the game. So maybe it's like a Bass Pro Shop or something like that. You know, like has that crossed your mind in terms of like,
oh yeah, 100%.
Work with other
That's
companies?
when we take a more metaverse type experience into it. And we do have a vision for that. So ideally, it's funny you mentioned Bass Pro Shops because I often have used Orvis as an example, Orvis fly fishing company. But yeah, like, so eventually there can be NFTs that get you a fishing rod and you buy that NFT and we have a deal with Orvis and that gets you a 25% discount to go to their in-person store, like their physical store. So we'll eventually bridge the digital with the physical in that way through a variety of partnerships. And that's definitely in the works. Now you mentioned ad space. Right now we've got tons of billboard space. So if you go run around in Toledo Valley Resort, you'll see all sorts of different ad space that we've got there. And one thing that we've done is, are you guys familiar with the Neo Tokyo community? Alex Becker, it's a huge gaming element in Web3. Well, that Neo Tokyo community has Alex Becker and Elio Trades, I think. Those two guys are the founders of it, I believe. And basically, we took their logo and their branding and we put it in the game because we really like that community and what they're doing. It's very pro Web3 gaming. And so we wanted to get a spotlight on them. And now because of that, it's made it more marketable for Neo Tokyo to say, hey, look, we're in Cornucopias game. And now we're probably going to do the same thing with a lot of other brands that we're excited about in terms of what they're doing. Eventually, that will absolutely be a ad revenue type of scenario, but we don't have the daily active users yet because it's so early. But at some point when we have legit daily active users, 100% we'll have ad packages and we'll have a team doing ad sales.
Now you talked about
that will add utility to the token as well.
And you were talking about you have visions. You come from like the film space, if I'm correct
Film
here.
Major, I've always wanted to do.
So you said your big vision ultimately, like Halo as a movie now. Like, are you guys looking to do that eventually?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. When the time is right, the time is not right now just because I have so much more to do than I could possibly do in a day and the entire team is in the same spot. The lore is far enough along that I could take that off to a screenwriter and I could work on something with somebody. And at some point, that's what we'll do. But the reality is we would then need to decide, how do we want to shoot it? Do we want to create in-game graphics to utilize for the movie? Most likely that's something that we would do, which would mean we'd have to build out another team specifically with our art assets and the ability to create the similar look and feel of Cornucopias to build that out. Or we could do a real life type movie and hire actual actors. But then again, you have AI now. I mean, imagine we're going to be seeing our first AI movies that are actually decent in like a year or two, the pace that's going. So, well, that would be another tech answer to your previous question, Jody. But yeah.
I was going to ask too, like, because you bring it up, what's your just personal take on how you see AI just evolving in the video game industry? Like, is it just small tools used by existing creators? Is it, large swaths of graphics, that are created, with a single prompt? Like, what are you seeing is actually moving the needle?
That's a good question. So thankfully, Unreal Engine is is already got AI well in mind, and there's several areas that they're already allowing utilization of that, which is pretty awesome. You can also utilize AI to create images that help you with designing outfits or designing certain character look and feels. And so we use it for that already. There's the ability, this is one thing that we're incredibly excited about, and we wanted to be the first to do it, but I don't think we're going to be now. But to have AI powered NPC NFTs. So that's a mouthful of acronyms, but what it basically means, your NPC is your non-player character. It's in the game running around, but there's not a person operating it, right? It's programmatically operated by the gaming engine, and you set that up to create a more busy feel to your game and have lore and stuff like that. Well, if you empower that NPC with an LLM, which is a large language model, and that large language model has a refined data set around your lore and what's going on in Cornucopias, then that person can talk to you about what's going on in the game. It can almost be, it could be like the person at the airport that you go to for questions and the help desk. Like you could have that kind of character. Hey, what can I do in Solace 2? Like where do I head for the fishing, or, whatever. There's how do I get to the machine shop and get some metal for, and there's a variety of things you could do there. But then you take that a step further and you take that NPC that's LLM powered, and you make it an NFT. Now I can buy this asset. Maybe it's a dog. Maybe it's just a buddy to run around and carry out tasks and operate my farm. Maybe it's a farmer. I bought this farmer NPC that now can operate my land. It deducts some of my profits, or, whatever. Like, there's a variety of approaches we could take with that, but that's kind of some of the stuff that we're looking at doing. Another example would be, you've got music, the ability to generate in-game music. What I want to really look into is when the intensity level changes, that the music can change as well. So we want to have certain genres of music that as they change, it's AI powered in that regard, and the intensity gradually increases. So say you're walking around Solace and there's a bear nearby, you hear a bear growl. Well, maybe the heartbeat increases a little bit in the music. That the game detects that there's danger nearby. And so the music gets a little bit more intense. The closer the bear gets, the more intense the music gets. Then you're in a battle and it's in full intensity. You can use AI for stuff like that too, to make the experience that much more immersive and powerful. But
Yeah.
so much.
I mean,
there's endless applications. Sorry. I could go on and on.
I was just gonna say real quick. I mean, I think it's super helpful. I mean, I hadn't really thought of that, but on the NPC side, but if you can just have an NPC like that you can talk back to, that's like, hey, instead of let's say you're missing one, token or one shard of a diamond out of like 7 you're supposed to get, if they can tell you, hey, that's why you can't pass, versus you spending like hours and hours and hours not knowing what you're exactly questing for, then that's amazing, because that's like, you don't have to developer write that like tree of like actions. You can just be like, hey, look, like I intelligently know that you're just missing this small piece. Go back to this spot and get it.
Yeah, it's like a helper. Yeah, there's so much you can do with it. You can just have a dog that's trained, and you got your little buddy that follows you around or whatever. But yeah, it could be a little R2D2 type of robot that follows you around. The endless amounts of creativity that we can apply to how we utilize the engine along with AI to make a better gaming experience for everyone. And that's one reason, back to your question about movies, one thing that was really compelling to me about why get involved with this game and start this game. Well, it's because gaming allows for creativity in a way that even film doesn't. So it takes, film, you've got film, and you can create the script, you can create the lore, the plot, the structure, the dialogue of each character, the look of the actors, the scenes, the look of the scenes, the way whatever camera you shoot with, and the settings on the lenses. You can create in so many ways, the music and the backbone, the score of the movie. All of that is amazing. That was why I got into film, because it was like, the room for creativity was endless, it seemed. Well, with gaming, you add a whole nother element, and that's immersion. Now you can allow people to interact with all of the things that you've created. And that's incredibly powerful. Then when you decentralize that, and then you allow this thing 10 years to build on its own with the governance and the DAO and everything that's occurring around that, it's like, whoa, kind of mind blowing what can happen. So
Yeah, I was gonna say, it sounds like there's literally, you probably don't sleep. Like there's constantly different things that you could be,
there's a
improving
thousand
upon or
threads
building
and
out.
stuff.
How do you make sure that you're focused?
I mean, this might sound counterintuitive, but a big part of it for me is staying fit, exercising, staying grounded, doing things that do give me a little separation. Um, I try to I read books, audiobooks while I'm doing cardio at the gym after a workout. I vent my stress that way, but the amount of stress in terms of things that I know that our team is overloaded with in terms of bottlenecks there, and the amount that I have, it's it's a pace that we're going to have to settle down after a bit to really make it sustainable for the long haul. But our pace has just been insane. And as we get properly funded, I mean, to build a game of this quality, you really need 50 million to 100 million, and possibly even more if you look at the long-term cost, right? So obviously there needs to be revenue stream and things of that nature, but we're not where we need to be yet to have that, to build out the team to where everybody's not working at breakneck speeds. We'll get there. I really believe that we'll get there this full cycle. And that's going to really allow us to build out segmented teams that are empowered with certain aspects of the game. For example, we have custom domes. Those have been sold already, those NFTs. What you're going to have available to you in the custom domes is the ability to utilize a variety of different building kits to create your own game. So you, Avi, you can take a custom dome, you can buy it on JPEG Store or tokenriot.com, tokenriot.io. You can buy it on the marketplaces right now, the NFT marketplaces. And then when we have the development kits ready, you would be able to build it out. So you might take a tropical kit along with the PvP kit and along with the business kit, and you take your community and you say, hey, we're going to do a PvP battle. It's $20 for tickets. And you've created a war zone where they can battle against each other inside Cornucopias. So then we've taken community, empowered them to create and build the game, making it even bigger. We can go to people that have large groups of people. They then get the ability to add so much value to their community, and it creates a whole new stream of users for us as well. So that coming, and we would put a specific team on that as we build out. Anyway, sorry, I'm giving you
hyped with
mouthfuls
you,
for
man.
every answer.
Yeah. No, I'm very bullish on what you guys are building. I can feel that passion coming through. We talked last time about like the file nodes. Can you just touch on that a little bit and like why it's important, in general for the gaming community and how to get involved?
So previously mentioned, one of our goals is to gradually decentralize over time. So the file nodes decentralize the game infrastructure in a way. So it's a huge step forward to helping us to become more decentralized. And this particular file node sale is one where it helps with the download speed. So any of the node license holders that are actively operating and utilizing their computer, their GPU to provide data and serve up data will help improve the user experience of the game. So you come to create a player account, it's going to send you the desktop launcher. If you've got a qualified graphics card, it's going to let you download the game. Well, that's a huge file. And so what we don't want is people having 45-minute download times and then it times out and they just have a rough onboarding experience. The shorter we can make that time, that download time, the better the user acquisition rate is of getting gamers into the game. You don't want a high attrition rate because you've got a bunch of problems there. You also don't want a single point of failure. So now we've got tons of computers that will serve up this data. That's our first file node, which is on sale right now. You can go to cornucopias.io and click on the marketplace. You can either buy the NFT on Base or Cardano. So we're multi-chain there as well.
What are some of the benefits, I guess, for the node operators?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. So we have a section of our tokenomics that is 4 different types of rewards. And so we've allocated 22 million Copy tokens to pay out to our node operators. And so those will be paid out over time each year. So that's a good amount of tokens that you can earn for operating the node. Now, there's certain criteria involved, meaning it has to be, your computer has to be active and running and serving data. So there's going to be a way that we calculate and optimize to make sure that we're providing the best possible service for the end user, the ones downloading the game. But provided you're up and running, it's linked to your player account, then you earn rewards for operating that node. So we have a lot of people participating with us already, and the node sale is still running. That's going to be going on until July 1st. So jump in and get one. It just gets more expensive each tier that we go on. So the best time to act is now if you're interested. Yeah.
I think me and Jody might do that. And then in addition to that, so these are tokens you can use in game, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Are they then tradable too on the public markets?
Oh yeah. So our token's tradable on a lot of the dexes. We're on 3, actually 4 or 5 centralized exchanges now, but 3 that we listed ourselves and provided liquidity on. So one of those is Gate, one's MEXC, and another one is BitTrue. And we're working on getting on more. I'm talking to about 10 others right now, just back and forth evaluating things. So yeah, plenty available, and on Uniswap, PancakeSwap, and MinSwap. So that's Cardano, Ethereum, and Binance, where you can get it on dexes as well.
Yeah.
So very readily available and plenty of liquidity. So yeah.
The question I have as a fun one is, I see you have a Bob Ross energy drink in your background. I've had one in my my refrigerator since I moved into my house. So it's been 2 years, and I keep it there just for good vibes. Have you actually tasted it?
No,
Is it
I
any
haven't.
good?
I'm preserving this.
Same thing. It just sits in my fridge for
I love it.
2 years running.
I mean,
How'd you see that? That was so small in the back.
Because I recognize that. I see it every day.
Eagle eyes back over here. I was
That's
actually
amazing.
Bob Ross for a Halloween party about 2 years ago.
yeah.
I used to watch the show. I mean, I love creative
Yeah.
stuff, and he would paint, and it was his voice and the way he painted was about as relaxing as watching golf on Sunday afternoon. You know, the way those guys talk, he
love
kind of
that.
talks
Yeah.
the same way, but you just kind of take a nap, honestly. Anyway,
I love it. You have so much going on, so it's like hard to probably for you to pinpoint one thing. But if you had to name like 1 or 2 things that you're most excited for over the next 3, 6, 9 months, what would that be?
it's getting people into the core game loop. Currently, the pre-alpha gameplay that we have available is racing, and that racing experience is phenomenal. Like, a lot of people really love it, but that's just such a small, tiny fracture of our game. And there was a reason that we chose to launch with racing, because the speeds that you're traveling at are in excess of the sound barrier in some cases. So that's incredibly fast in the digital space, right? But that speed has to replicate from me to you. In some cases, we're replicating incredibly well from me to the UK and to all over the world. Eventually, when we have enough servers around, that will be even better and even better. But we have that performing incredibly well. That's a very big challenge. And to have it perform with that kind of element in place enables us to go ahead and build out the rest of the game loop, which is what I'm most excited about. So what I know is that, without a doubt, knowing that we did that and it replicates and performs incredibly well, we are definitely going to pull off the rest of what we've got to do this year, which is progression and getting people into leaderboards and making it more of a complete game loop. It's definitely not going to be a complete game loop by the end of the year, but it is going to be more of the experience that we've been promising our community that we're coming with. And that's what I'm most excited about. Get people into the land, exploring the land, doing things that progress their skill sets, and traveling from one dome to the next. So traveling in your NFT vehicle from Solace over to Toledo Valley because you wanted to get some racing, you wanted to change up your activities or whatever. That's pretty exciting. So I would say that is what I'm most excited about. And then just continuing to build with the team, seeing the team at the conference. We're going to be a consensus. It's always great to see people face to face because we're all over the world. We don't have a centralized office. And so we don't get to see people that often. And it's good to get together with the team and see them in non-digital form.
The IRL, as people say, we'll be there as well. So we'll have to connect at the
link up. Yeah, for sure.
Genzio Media House. Yeah, so that'd be cool. Thanks so much for popping on. This was really remarkable. I was just taking a look at some of the videos you guys have on your website. So it's Cornucopias .io. We'll put the link in the description because it's a little harder to spell. But this is fascinating. You can tell that you're passionate about it. You go to work every day. Probably doesn't feel like work for you. You're really building something awesome. So
sometimes it feels like work when it's really, really stressful and I'm just fatigued and exhausted.
At 2 a.m. You're like, all right, I've had
16-hour days in a row. But for the most part, I love it.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, thanks so much again for popping on, and we'll see you down in Austin then.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys. We'll see you soon.
Thanks, Josh.